Best-selling author of The Last Nizam and Empire of Enchantment, John Zubrzycki's doctoral thesis encircles historical links between Indian and Western stage magicians. Here he is with us on his probably 10th, 11th.
Visit to Calcutta?
Yeah.
Oh, I think more than that. I've lost count.
He's lost count. So he's here in Kolkata, one of his favorite cities in India, and he will be participating in the Kolkata Literature Festival tomorrow at the International Kolkata Book Fair. Here he is with us, and the interview is for SNU Press and for Ajkal. Welcome, sir.
Well, Jenny, thank you very much for inviting me to come here. Thank you to the staff of Sister Nidevita University for making this possible.
Thank you. It's our honor, sir. So I would first like to ask you, how is Kolkata to you? Because you've been in love with India for a long, long time, like 3-4 decades.
Oh, yes. And Calcutta was the first city I arrived in back in, I think, 1976. So it's a very long association. I've come here. I spent many years in India as a foreign correspondent and covered many stories here in Calcutta. And it is a city very close to my heart. I think Eastern India, particularly Calcutta, is my favorite part of the country. I find the people warm, hospitable, and there's so much fascinating history and culture in this place, which really attracts me to it.
We believe that, like many other cities, of course, around the world, but Calcutta has a very unique magical charm about itself. So, what do you think? Because you mainly concentrate on writing about magic.
Well, my last book was on magic. It's my other books have been more historical and more biographical. But yes, my latest book, Jaduwalas, Jugglers and Jinns, was a history of Indian magic. And Eastern India, particularly Bengal, featured very strongly in that. And not just recently, of course, because it's the home of famous magicians such as P.C. Sorcar, Senior and now Junior, as well as many other Bengali magicians. He just happens to be probably the best known. But going when you look at the historical records, Bengal comes up a lot in those documents. There's a passage in my book about the encounter of the Mughal Emperor Jahangir with a troupe of Bengali magicians back in the 17th century, and I used it to illustrate just how these magical traditions, how they've how far back they go, because a lot of the tricks that Jahangir describes these Bengali magicians as doing are still being performed by street magicians today.
So, dating back to centuries ago, from snake charmers to the Jaduwalas now, and then there are much more modern versions of magic also around the world. What do you think about how magic has evolved around the globe?
Well, part of both my thesis and the book was to illustrate the influence that Indian magic had, not just on Western magic and conjuring, and we're talking about entertainment magic, but also in popular culture. India, because it was in the minds of Europeans back in the particularly 19th century, was this land of magic and mysticism. And once people started writing about India and highlighting that aspect of India, once Western magicians started coming to India and encountering Indian magic for themselves, they appropriated Indian names, costumes, but they also started they learnt some of the tricks that the traditional Indian magicians were doing and adapted them for the Western stage. They started dressing like Indians and calling themselves Hindu fakirs, which of course is you can't have a Hindu and a Hindu fakir because one is obviously Hindu, one is Muslim. But in the minds of the popular, if in the European mind in the 19th century, that didn't matter for very much. It was just this exoticism which they were attracted to. So, but it had a huge influence. I mean, most Western magicians in what is called the golden age of magic, which is about 1880 to 1920, incorporated some Indian tricks, or dressed as Indians, or pretended, or used the fact that they'd been to India and had learned these tricks in their shows. So it was very much, and plus you had these street magicians appearing at world fairs and exhibitions. that was huge because millions of people went to see these things. Millions and millions, like the Paris Exposition, 1900, 50 million people, and the troupe of Indian magicians that was performing there was actually recruited by Motilal Nehru and brought to Paris by the patriarch of the Nehru Gandhi dynasty, something which I discovered. So what I'm saying is that people couldn't travel to India in those days, but India could come to them. And so millions flocked to these international exhibitions and shows to see Indian culture firsthand, and magic was central to that.
Coming to books, if I can connect books to magic, how would you differentiate between magic, fantasy, and magic realism?
Oh, that's a big question. Look, I mean, there are no, the lines are very blurred between all those different genres. And, magic is, something that's very evocative. The term itself, magic, can mean so many different things. It's probably one of the most overused terms in the world. I mean, next to love, magic is probably the next most overused term. But it's something. People ask me whether magic is something. I mean, the sort of magic that I've been writing about, the sort of magic that we see performed on, not so much on the streets now, but in shows like PC Soccer, whether it will continue. And I think that our need to be for wonderment, to see something that makes us question, whether it is real or not. That excites us in that way because we're being, fooled into thinking that what we're seeing is real magic, but but our mind says one thing and our rational sort of consciousness says something else. That it can't be true. What we're seeing, it can't be real magic. We know it's trickery, but the fact that magicians can still excite that sense of wonderment in us, even in this digitized age, I think is a very good thing, and I think it will continue.
It's said that traveling is also a kind of magic. So I was reading your past interviews, and I got to know you prefer solo traveling. And last year you've been to Burma and Aru in Kashmir. So how has India charmed you? How has Indian landscape charmed you with its magic?
Yeah, it certainly has. Yes, I do. I love traveling solo, and I've been to, I think, just about every single state in India. Next week, I'm going to the Andaman and Nicobar Islands for the first time, which I'm really looking forward to. Every time I come to India, mostly I'm coming now to attend book fairs or to do research for books. So I tend to stick mainly to the bigger cities. But every time I come, I try and find somewhere new to go. And as you said, last year I went to Aru in Kashmir, fortunately before the troubles there started, and also to Murshidabad in West Bengal. A couple of days ago, I went up to Serampur and Chandanagar and Chinsura, and to see that part of the these European settlements on the Hooghly. That's something I hadn't seen before. So even in Calcutta, I went to the flower market for the first time under the Howrah Bridge, which to me is one of the most extraordinary sights in India, and totally magical. I mean, it was just so the vibrancy of the place, the colors, the scents. It's the scents, as in not sense, but sense. Was extraordinary. So yeah, I've could easily spend I think a lifetime just exploring India and finding magical things. It is an extraordinary place, much to be discovered, and that's what's always attracted me to it.
This is a maiden visit to Sustainability University. So, any message for the the students who are aspiring to be writers and poets in future?
Follow your passions, follow your dreams. It's important, I think. Education really shouldn't be just about, of course, it needs to be career focused, it needs to be vocational, but I think you need to also follow your passions, because if you don't, then you're not going to find what you really want. And I think if you can find that, then you also make a bigger contribution to society, because you're driven by passion, and that's reflected in how you approach life, and how you if you're working and interacting with other people, they'll sense that too. So that's very important. But great that you've got this wonderful campus here. That this is a new university, I know, and it's starting up, but it's great to see. In India has so much potential, so much talent, waiting to be realised, and it's very good to see institutions like this making that possible.
Thank you so much, sir. And that was a good 15 minutes of magic with the best-selling author of The Last Nizam and Empire of Enchantment. Sir, we look forward to reading more books of yours and getting more books in the future. Thank you so much for visiting.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Very lovely to have.